Good evening, everyone, and welcome to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for looking at the world's news and topics of the day from the spiritual perspective. My name is Andy, and I work as operations manager here at the IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway, where we have a fantastic live studio audience, as well as all of you joining us live on YouTube. Now remember, IKYA Live is not a normal news program in that we really seek to have an elevated discussion, a conversation about what's happening in the world around us. And spiritual teacher and enlightened master IKYA assists us by then trying to lift our consciousness and present a higher perspective and help us to see a bigger picture on things. So for it to be a conversation and a discussion, it depends on you and your questions and your perspective, your comments. So as IKYA teaches and looks at tonight's topic, please be sure to write in your comments or questions in the chat here on YouTube Live, or we'll also be taking questions from the audience here. And before we get started, be sure to like and share tonight's episode. Please share it widely because this is a really relevant topic tonight that a lot of people could get a lot of benefit from. So invite family, friends, fellow spiritual seekers already now, and follow us and subscribe to ikya.official on all the channels. All right, so to tonight's topic, we're going to dive into corruption. And as I was thinking about how to introduce tonight, I kind of laughed because I was thinking, like, corruption, it's almost ironic that we think corruption's a problem, because actually when you look at the way we humans behave, it's like we do corruption all the time. So we need to actually have a word for the opposite of corruption, not for corruption. But beyond that, I think what we're really touching into tonight is how concerning it is, the level of corruption in the world around us, and maybe more importantly, how we, even in the Western democratic countries, but all over the world, we humans are choosing corrupt politicians, leaders, governments, military, you name it. We're actually choosing it more and more. And as IKYA will talk about, it is a serious threat to the future of our civilization. So let's just dive in right now and ask IKYA the question that we posed for you guys tonight, which is, IKYA, like, what is it with corruption? Why do we prefer it?
Because humans are not hardwired to do anything for the greater good unless they get something out of it personally. We need to understand that the human brain is still living in the tribal age, in the Stone Ages. And pretty much every behavior can be traced back to that. Remember that genetically, we've not really changed over the last 100,000 years. Our society has, and the way we do things have changed. But human nature has not changed. So our brain will always interpret everything from a tribal perspective. And I've addressed this before, that empathy does not exist. It's a type of manipulation that you use in order to exploit someone's weakness for your own benefit. And it's like genetically, that's what empathy is. We can learn true empathy, but it takes a lot of personal growth work. So, as also Andy mentioned, corruption means, the perspective is that we have these ideals about how we should behave, and then we have the way humans actually behave, and we call that corruption. But we need to understand that survival is number one. You're hardwired to do anything to survive. And it doesn't matter what it is. You can kill, you can steal, you can lie, you can do absolutely whatever, because survival is truth. Biologically, survival is the only truth. And then what you did in order to survive, that's the gospel. And we need to understand that as an animal, it's how we operate. And then we have this very thin layer of sprinkles of civilization and ideals. But most people are not living up to those because it's not in their self-interest. So we need to look at this whole thing and how our behaviors are productive and how they're not productive. So when we are to do something for the greater good, it's always back to how do I benefit? So in a tribe, you know everyone and you know what they do and also what they do for you. So it's in your interest to also look after them and treat them nicely and let them have something sometimes. And you may even stand up for them because it's in your self-interest, right? Because they bring you something. You know, as I said, it's in the tribal situations, basically you give one thing and then you get 20 different things back, because if let's say it's 21 individuals, they all give their thing too. If they make something of it, something they do, but you do your thing and then you get the benefit of what everybody else is doing, right? And that is the foundation of ethics. It's a foundation of moral behavior. It's how we place ourselves in a greater context. But the limit is always, do I benefit personally? So, when we have the opportunity, again, our genes are dictating a behavior that serves number one, which is you. So for most people, when it comes to what is considered criminal behavior, it's simply a matter of opportunity and how much you can gain from it. For most people, killing someone else would simply be a matter of how much they're getting paid to do it. And if you think of it in your own mind, right? If someone offered you $1 billion to kill a random stranger, would you? Most people would. And when it comes to other types of behavior, it's simply a matter of price. How much you benefit versus the risk versus the flip side of it. So this is what human nature is. So when we have the opportunity and we benefit, you do not have an off switch, because that goes against the rules of survival. So what you did to survive, if successful, is the truth, is the right behavior from a purely animalistic point of view. All the other stuff came as we started to form societies, and then we figured out, well, maybe the greater good and how we are to interact together. We need kind of rules because it's getting too big, it's getting too complex. So we have this tribal mind, and yet we need to relate to people we don't really know, right? Because your positive or like empathetic actions would always rely on you knowing this person or knowing what you get out of it. Why should I treat this person nicely? Why shouldn't I kill him? Why shouldn't I just steal his food? Right? So the moment you feel something, it's because you recognize the benefit. But as we started to build greater groups and, towns and civilization started, we needed to relate to people that we don't know, and with people that we cannot determine the immediate benefit. But it's based on other people saying this person is important, so you should treat this person nicely. And over time, that turned into laws and rules. But it only works for as long as you see the benefit. As long as you feel this actually benefits my survival. And the way humans have survived successfully is by working together, first in tribes, and then kind of expanding on that. It's the same function that we have in the brain when it comes to specialization. You are a hunter, you can be a warrior, you can be this or that. So you specialize, which means that you do your thing and someone else will do their thing, and you're not really paying attention. You just trust that they will do their thing. And as long as they do that in a way that benefits you, you're okay with it. So when society grew, that thing became even more specialized, that someone will do something and you don't know, but you have the benefit of then living in, for instance, a town that works and that, provides protection or services, and you just assume that everyone is doing whatever they're doing. So, when people have the opportunity and they're hardwired to fill their pockets, because why wouldn't they? It's risk, right, versus benefit. And for the ruling classes, which is the corrupt class, it's the same thing. You do not end up on top unless you're corrupt. So the ruling classes throughout history have always been the most corrupt people. They've been just doing whatever they want to. Laws do not apply to them. And the strange thing is, we have it in us, right? When we can't see why a rule would benefit me personally, we're hardwired to try to figure out a way around it because survival is number one. Think of yourself, think of your own life. Most people break several rules a day. They can break several laws a day, right? They can exercise their immoral behavior, both when nobody's looking and when people are looking, if it benefits them. And we look at people who are law-abiding as stupid. Traditionally, they've been considered to be weak. Strong people, they make the rules, they don't follow them. And this has been the case throughout human evolution. We admire people who break the rules. Just think still today in movies. The heroes are not the bureaucrats, are they? There are very few movies made about bureaucrats, right? All the heroes, if you look at every single hero, they have a thing with the law. They're breaking the rules. And the law-abiding people are trying to stop them because of the rules, but they know better. They have to stand up. They have to cut through all the red tape and do what's right. That's what the hero is. Again, the enemy will often be the people who follow the law. Look at, for instance, the relationship between superheroes and law enforcement. Then you have the police officers that are so law-abiding and follow the rules that they're just not doing their job. And here comes the superhero and beats up everyone. Beats them shitless and, will cut through everything and save the day by breaking all the laws and being violent, breaking in, but that's a hero. So, from early beginning, we would admire people who broke the law. Why? Well, evolution states that we need to go beyond our current state to evolve. Breaking the rule means, well, I can do better. I can figure out a better way to do this. And you're supposed to. Maybe figure out a better path, right? Figure out, maybe we should move. Maybe we should do something that takes courage. And the safe thing is to just stay put. Do not change anything. Just follow the rules. But that is death. The people who've been leading their groups, saving the tribes, have been the people who said, no, I'm just doing this. I'm figuring this out. It's the bold people. And people with guts, they never follow the rules. So genetically, we know this. Our survival depends on people who break the rules. And through their behavior, if successful, they dictate the new rules and behaviors. Right? So it's the relationship between the accelerator and the brakes. It's not the brakes that will bring the car forward. It's the accelerator. But you also need the brakes. So corruption is the behavior where you put your own self-interest first. And that may become beneficial for everyone else. I just want to do this thing, right? And it turns out to be successful now. Everybody wants to be part of it. This is also why we like to copy other people when it comes to trends and celebrities and all that. It's because of that. They set a behavior and it's become successful and we all want to copy it. And the reason is not that we want to be popular. It's because genetically we're dictated to do this in order to survive. So we prefer the corrupt. The corrupt will always be the heroes. And the kind and gentle, law-abiding people will always be considered to be weak, losers that are getting in the way of progress. So when you look at people in business, politics, whatever it is, will like the people who are self-serving assholes because they can pave the way. They will not follow the rules, they will make new rules that we will automatically think will be better. Right? So psychologically, we're all hardwired to behave this way, which also means that when you break the rules, you feel, ooh, I'm smarter. Because we think that the corrupt are smarter. Because they're finding a better way. So, for instance, this is also why in the States, for instance, when rich people brag about not paying taxes, people say, yay, good for you. When the result is that the people who are impoverished, who are cheering for it, they have to pay the taxes instead. Right? If all companies in the United States paid the taxes they're supposed to by law, that would represent more tax revenue than all personal income tax. One could then basically cancel all income tax and one would still have more tax revenue. And yet the people who are paying taxes from their personal income are cheering for rich people and companies who are not paying taxes. Right? Because we're hardwired to do so. Because we identify with the leaders. So when a leader is corrupt, we think they're smarter than the laws, because the laws are to stop you. They are there to protect you, but it's the accelerator that will make the car move. So we're all attracted to those people who are bragging about what they can get away with. And success, for the most part, is what you can get away with in broad daylight. Right? Just think about what people you're attracted to. It's not the bureaucrats. So just, this is how we operate. Did we have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got a question from a different perspective coming in from Germany, but I think a lot of us can kind of empathize with what she's asking, and that is that she's often observed that helping others makes people feel happy. They simply feel better. Is that not a reward too that is of equal value to what you're talking about so far?
This is the genetic empathy that I talked about. It's basically, from a genetic standpoint, it's the exploitation of someone's weakness. Because when you help this person, that person owes you. And you're supposed to get reward chemicals because it's an investment. Now that person is your bitch because you have told this story about yourself and you have increased your own value to your tribe by showing how generous you are. They cannot get rid of you now, and that person will need you, and that person will owe you something. And in the process, you have elevated your own status. And this is why you feel good. It's not because what you did is so great. It's a manipulation scheme in your biology. And this is why it feels good. It increases your chance of survival. Whenever you can give someone to someone, it's because then you have an overflow. Right? So it's an investment. You know that at some point you can cash in on that. You can count on that person's support. That person will talk about you in a positive way. So you're supposed to get happy brain chemicals and rewards for this type of behavior. And it's important when it comes to developing true empathy that we understand the biological empathy, and that is basically behaving like a fucking psychopath. But we don't understand it because it feels good and we do something that we think is great. But also think, for instance, a lot of the good deeds people do they actually make any difference? Right? For instance, when you look at aid, aid to Africa, for instance, right? It used to be very popular. It was mostly about the Western countries feeling better about themselves. Look, we're giving so much, while it really stopped the progress, which was the political and, the goal of corporations to also give them money and to make them dependent so that they would stay there so we can steal all their raw materials and stop progress. But we could feel so good because we would, have these both organizations and in some countries even TV shows where people would give money, and we didn't care what would happen. It was about how we felt. Right? So often when we give, it's about how we feel, not if this will actually make a difference. And just look at how your brain works. It is the feeling. And when you've done your thing, you're a good person. What if that doesn't help that person at all? We don't care. Right? So this is biology. True empathy is often doing something where you do not benefit at all. And it's a whole different thing. And it takes a lot of growth work to cleanse out the biological empathy and move into a more mature way of relating to the world, because then it's not about giving what you have, it's giving what is needed. And often what we have cannot be used to assist someone in actual healing and growing, while the biological empathy is about giving what we have and feeling important and seeing that, I can make a difference. Giving bread to the poor. It's that type of thing. So, yep.
We actually have another question, which is, so if the collective average human being is corrupt, does that mean that to be able to come to grow into a position with leverage to actually be able to make an impact in the world that matters in the big picture, do we have to then play the game and be just as corrupt to get there? And from that place, do we, does one's best affect humanity in a good way?
Great question. I will answer this in a series of different ways because we need to understand the full tapestry here. Understand that laws and rules have never been for the ruling class. It's been to control people and tell them what to do. So the ruling class can do whatever they want to and suck out all the money. And just like the Catholic Church used to preach that, the poor people are lucky. Right? God loves them especially. And so you need to give us all your money. It's that type of thing. So the ruling classes, which are the corrupt classes, because laws do not apply to them. There is a two-tier system. And you see it, right? Rich people get away with anything. Laws do not apply to them in the same way. So laws were always about the ruling classes controlling the behavior of the lower classes and the working people and all that. And then also installing moral behavior in a way that the ruling classes never followed. And it's just important that we understand this. That yes, to get to the top, you will never get there unless you are corrupt. And then we need to understand what corruption is. Thing is, when you have laws and regulations and all of that, it's to make people behave in a predictable way so they can be controlled. Those people will never invent the wheel or anything else. The only way to rise is then to break the rules, not be a criminal, but break the rules in such a way that you're an entrepreneur, you come up with ideas, you kind of point forward in some way, right? That was the point of it, back to the tribal days. The ones who make sure that we all survive are those who are daring and find new ways, new things, whatever it is. You need that. And that takes a corrupt mind. It takes someone to, I'm not, putting up with this shit. I'll just do that thing. And just look at also, for instance, during a war, it's the corrupt people that will make the world go around. They're the ones who keep the black market going, and they can distribute like products and whatever. If it were to follow the rules, everyone would die. So we need that entrepreneurial way of thinking, and that is in a way the corrupt mind. So we need to understand that corruption depends on from where we're looking at it. The entrepreneurial mindset is also the corrupt mindset, because you have to break rules. Also, what people tell you that you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing that, that's a terrible idea. This is not what we're used to, right? Those are also rules, social rules, rules of collective consciousness, rules of habit. And people that, no, I'm doing this thing, this is better. So ultimately, there's no difference between that and breaking laws, because laws are also made up. So yes, only corrupt people will gravitate to the top, because you need that mindset. So it's also, one thing that is really interesting now is we get more corrupt today because life is better. We think that the human mind would appreciate everything we have, and then we will get kinder and more gentle and generous. The opposite happens. And it's simply because in our brains, again, understand that we're animals, right? We're tribal animals. So if you have stuff, in the old days, what would that say about you? You would be on top, right? If you had both a weapon, and a fishing rod and a net and this or that, you'd be like a big deal because you could do several things. Look at me. So you would be admired. I mean, that you would be a person of means. You would be, you have resources, and you would be on top. And because we have stuff today, your genes go, well, that didn't just happen. It happens because you're smarter than everybody else, right? You're so skilled, because how else could this happen? So you're smart. And so you become entitled. And you begin to think that, yeah, I'm smart. People should really listen to me. I don't have to follow rules. I will just do this thing because this is what I want. So the more stuff we have, the more corrupt we become, because we become entitled. Entitlement means that we become more self-important. And we've all become extremely self-important because our genes say, well, look at your life. You must be very important. And then we behave as important people. And important people They're on top. They don't follow rules. It does not apply to them. It's not supposed to. So in our minds, we all now belong to the ruling classes, which means laws, meh. The world should revolve around me. Because this is how it used to be. When you're on top, you make the rules. Your behavior creates success, which means that should be copied. That should be turned into law. So this is why people today in our part of the world, they will just do whatever. Well, I don't like this law. This is how it should be, because this is what I like. It comes from that way of thinking, that genetic instruction that, yeah, you are the blueprint, baby. Laws do not apply to you. So that's one aspect of it. But it's also, when then people have more stuff and they start behaving more corrupt, one will have to try to control that, which means more laws, more regulations. And then we feel trapped. And it means we don't want to follow that because it's not productive. After all, we're smarter than that. We always see the corrupt people as smarter, and smart is corrupt. So the more laws we have, the more we break them. Because the people on top, they break them anyway. And now we got to the point where people can see it. It used to be, kings and queens and all of that, they would have their portraits made and people would see, oh, they're godlike, they must be perfect. And today we know, well, people on top, they are corrupt. They get away with anything. They're actually the most rotten, disgusting people for the most part. They're entitled and they, So why should we follow the laws if they don't have to? But society's then trying to control people, normal people, with more and more laws and regulation, and people don't want to be part of that because they feel they're smarter. So we come to the point where it's not possible. So what happens when we feel trapped by the current laws? We're looking for the leader. Think of the tribe. It's basically a situation where our resources are running out and we feel trapped. We want the hero, which means not the bureaucrat. The one who can say, I am the law. I will just do whatever and I know how to do this. And they will go out and do it and they will save everyone. That's what people want whenever they feel trapped. Genetically, you are programmed for this behavior. So, when you feel limited, when you feel that you have reached a kind of state of when you've lost faith and you don't believe in society, it's the same thing as the tribe losing a resource, and this is not working anymore. It's falling apart. We all want the corrupt person. Because when you have a smart, law-abiding, kind person, we don't believe that this person can lead us. Because we need someone who can think differently and say, well, these rules obviously didn't work. So we want these people who can, cut through everything and save us all. So this is why also people want corrupt politicians. They want corrupt business leaders because genetically we think that they are smarter. They will find the way. They will save us. We are that stupid, unfortunately. But this is what's happening. This is pure biology. Humans are not smart. Humans are mostly 100% dominated by their biology and their thought process, their emotions. It's all biology for the most part. Unless you go into spiritual work for real and you begin to wake up and then you see how hilarious the human life form is and you can have fun with it. But at the same time, you recognize how much of human behavior is completely controlled by biology. So what we're seeing today is a biological response to what is happening in our environment, meaning laws, rules, whatever it is, and it's not working for us. So we want the corrupt leaders, and people are sharing for them. Because remember also, when we have complexity, I've talked about the complexity gap, meaning that life today is more complex than our brains can understand. In a tribe, maybe it's 30 to 50 individuals, and you can recognize everyone. You know who they are, what they're doing. You can relate to that. Then you live in a city with 1 million people, or a whole country, or in a globalized civilization like this one, and it's too big. And the system, politically, financially, everything is so big that nobody understands it anymore. It's just a machine that's basically become the sum of all behavior. And what we do then as humans, we understand that I have to understand my own survival. I need to understand the map. How else can I navigate? So then we begin to force information to become simpler and simpler, because we have to trust ourselves. We're supposed to. I've said many times that you're supposed to just believe whatever and just go for it. Because if you survive, you were right. If you die, you were wrong, and nature doesn't care. So what we then do is we try to reduce the complexity of the world into something that we can understand. And what is happening in our brains also, because people are starting to lose faith in information and education, because they feel, well, this whole thing is like this big, and what I can learn is this big. So it doesn't matter anyway. I have to trust my instincts. So we start to rely on our feelings instead of information, because no matter how much information you have, you can't fully understand how the world works anyway. So then we go back to the genetic smart, which is being corrupt and just trusting your instincts. And the other people who can also just cut through everything. So we come up with alternative ideas about how world works. And if we feel, yeah, sounds about right, because you can feel it, then you will use that and you will test it out. Because again, rule of evolution is the ones who survived were right. If we die, well, there are plenty of other people, right? In the game of evolution, you don't matter as an individual. It's the life form. So you're supposed to just believe whatever, trust whatever, and be extremely stubborn, because time will show if that was the right understanding. The human brain has no understanding of truth or reality. It's whatever helps you survive, whatever helps you dominate. So then we reduce everything until we say, I understand it now. And then you make your decision based on your wonderful understanding about how things work. And you will trust other people with the same world view. And often politicians, for instance, or other leaders that reduce things with an enormous complexity. So, they're all stupid, science idiots. This is what is really happening. We should be doing this. And people cheer because they can understand that. And they like the idea that, well, I am smart, obviously because I have things, right? So I belong to the ruling class, which means I'm smarter than other people, meaning that things cannot possibly be more complex than what I understand. You see what we're doing? So is it, well, it's not possible that I can't understand this, because why else would I have buttons I can push, right? Why else could I have, 20 different varieties of bread to choose from? I'm smart, obviously. So we start thinking, if I can't understand it, it's not real. And the most corrupt people will often have that attitude. They will simplify. Sometimes that is what it takes to survive. In an extreme situation, in life or death, You can't have someone sitting down and reflecting and philosophizing about the different options that would impact the environment. You need someone to, let's do this. And that's what we're looking for. And those are also the most corrupt people because they don't care about laws. They just do whatever they can get away with. And when people have that level of conviction, it's always self-serving. Survival is a very personal thing. So the people who are best at survival, they're the most egotistical, greedy people. That's why they survive. That's why they win. And people want to be like them. They want to be led by those people. Because the most greedy, egotistical, power-hungry people, they also want other people to see them as winners. So they can help people survive, not because they want to, not because it's the greater good, but because they can make people believe that they're great. We had another question?
Yes, kind of. I almost think of it like spiritual survival. We had a question of, to ascend from the collapse of civilization that we may be sliding toward, don't you think many more people will awaken to ascend? Is this not the only way?
Well, it's a nice thought. No, people do not want to wake up. The thing is, the biological life form operates on habits and programs and brain functions and genes and all of that. It can all be automated. And the biological consciousness means that you're asleep spiritually. It's simply about survival, procreation, and that's it. People have this enormous drive for falling asleep, for not having to deal with anything at all. We just want things to work so we can relax. So the goal most people have is to not having to think a single productive thought or having any feeling that is challenging, which means self-medication, sleep, unawareness. And when you look at our civilization, it's geared towards bringing us to sleep, entertainment, food, all sorts of drugs, even, medical drugs. Everything we do is about falling asleep even more. So, and when we fall asleep, we don't care because then we're asleep. We simply want our drugs. We simply want our entertainment, and we don't want to deal with things. This is also why we are moving towards dictatorship, because if we want a living democracy, we need people who are actually educated and awake, and they want to do things for a greater good, and sorry, that's dying out. People don't want that. They just want the drugs to work so they can go to sleep and feel good. And this is what we're seeing. So no, it's not like more and more people want to wake up. More and more people want to fall asleep. And they get aggressive if they're not allowed to fall asleep. They just want their drugs and entertainment and shitty food and whatever can give them a cascade of brain chemicals. Waking up spiritually does not happen by chance. It takes an enormous amount of willpower, enormous amount of work and investment over time. And any of you who have actually tried, it doesn't just happen, right? It's a fight. And it's a long one, because everything in you will fight against it. And our whole civilization is one big machine to lower your consciousness and make you fall asleep, because that's what people want. Which means that the corrupt class on top can get away with even more, which they are. We have the thing, for instance, in the States, which is kind of funny, where poor people are giving their money to Trump, right? So that he can cut the taxes for wealthy people. And to do that, to take away more kind of benefits and services for poor people. And poor people are cheering. You know, since the tax breaks that Trump gave, the billionaires and the billionaire class in the United States have since 2018, when it did, increased their worth and their wealth by 40%. That's where the money is going, because poor people want it to be so. Because they identify with the rule breaking, So they're cheering when also a person like Trump is bragging about not paying taxes. Yay, here's my man. Take my money. You know, it's biology. And it's understandable. We're not smart. So no, we'll not have a wave of people who suddenly want to wake up. We have a wave of people who want to sign up for eternal sleep. So spiritual work is challenging and it's difficult. It's not for everyone. And this is where we are at on the planet. This is why we're also moving into the endarkenment. Because most people, they want to turn off the lights. So we need to turn the light on. How do we do this? There's one mechanism that's really interesting. When it comes to survival, your biggest threat to survival is injury, right? If you get injured, you can die. Throughout history, there's been no medicine, right? If you got injured, you would die. So, what are you to do if you get injured? Everything and anything. It's not like then you will say, well, the rule says I'm not supposed to do this thing, so I guess I will just stay here and die. No. You're supposed to claw your way back. You're supposed to kill. You're supposed to steal. You're supposed to do whatever it takes for you to survive. You will rip the clothes off of someone's back to make yourself a bandage. And you're supposed to. So, that is how you're programmed genetically. What happens with emotional trauma? What happens with everything that is unresolved in your past? As I've explained before, your brain, because it still lives in a reality, 200,000 years ago, your brain believes that all injury is physical. Emotional injury is physical. This is why the body is trying to find a physical solution to emotional needs, right? You feel bad, well, let's eat. What? Right? You feel bad so we can get violent. What? This is what I'm talking about. Emotions and the abstract thinking in the human brain is so new that the brain does not really understand it yet. It still believes because you feel bad, it must be a physical injury. So, when you have emotional trauma, you are instructed to become more corrupt because it's life or death. You're supposed to do anything. This is also why when people have a lot of emotional trauma, they will overstep. They can be completely unsavory in their behavior because it's justified by their need to survive. They are instructed by their pain to do whatever it takes, including killing people. This is also why when people have emotional trauma, they can justify killing someone. We don't have a limit. So, this is the key. It is back to when you feel bad, you should have a snack. And think of every possible emotional injury having different snack solutions, right? No matter what it is in the world that you think you should have. Basically, to survive, your brain project a trick into your emotions, which is the world owes you. There has been a great injustice. This is what entitlement is. It comes from emotional trauma and is basically the survival instincts in your biology trying to instruct your behavior by creating the thought that it's injustice, they owe you, you should have this. So always the story that the world owes you something. Because when you look at behavior from emotional injury, it's always the story that someone owes me something. And this is pure survival. You are supposed to feel that way so that you are willing to do absolutely everything, overstep, steal, murder, because you deserve it, right? Then your emotional survival means more than other people's lives. And that balance will be completely shifted the moment you recognize your own trauma. You need justice. And justice is you having your way. The world giving you what it owes. It's basically so that you're able to rip the clothes off of someone's back and make a bandage. Because, well, I can do that because it belongs to them. Then you will die. Your survival has to be more important. So this is the game of survival, but understanding that the brain does not understand emotions yet, or abstract thinking. And all your baggage is mental and emotional. It's your stories, it's your past. And it's instructing you, well, you have to break the rules. You can't follow, you have to just cut through, you have to do whatever. And most people today, because we are in this state of systemic stress, everybody is traumatized. We will have the instinctual thought that the world owes me. I deserve, I should have. So I will just go and take it because it's so unjust and unfair that I didn't get this. So most people will overstep. They will be aggressive. They will have this feeling that the world owes them something so that they will do whatever it takes to survive. And look at the world today. Look at how people are behaving. People snap like that. People get violent like that. It didn't used to be that way. But because of the sense of emotional trauma and stress, genes are then sending the signals to do absolutely whatever because you have to. It's important. So look at many people and how they relate to their emotions. The screaming and yelling, right? The whole kind of woke thing, which has become kind of a joke. When you look at woke being including people, right? Giving everyone the rights and all, that's fine. It's not what we're talking about. It's the screaming and yelling part. And you find that all over. Like the whole spectrum of human behavior now is very much from a state of entitlement. Entitlement comes from emotional trauma. So we're all traumatized today, right? Kids growing up, they're traumatized. It's not just because parents are lazy. It's like recognizing that the world is so stressful that we want to take care of our kids and make sure that they're okay. But by doing so, we make them less robust. And in the States, I think it was about 50% of all college kids claim to have a mental illness. 20% of college graduates, they will bring their parents to job interviews. What the fuck are we doing? We have now a generation that can't deal with life because they've felt the entitlement and the parents have been catering to it. And there is no off button. It will make us even more nervous. It will give us even more anxiety because that feeds the entitlement. And the anxiety means that we can instruct the world to make us very important so we can get what we want without having to achieve anything. It's this whole thing. And that is corruption. Entitlement is corruption in essence. Right? So we are in a very strange place. But we need to understand this is why we choose corrupt people. We have chosen worse and worse politicians. You can have decent, good people who are intelligent, who have experience and education, and people don't vote for them. They will vote for the most corrupt, vulgar versions, which is basically themselves. They think that those people can save us all, and they can't. So, the only way to move past this, you have to heal your past. When you have emotional trauma in your past, and you do, when you have stories and memories, again, think of the conclusion. The world owes me. This was unfair to me. You will be instructed genetically to behave selfishly, to be greedy, to be violent, to steal, to cheat, to lie, to murder, and you can't stop it. So the key to understanding corruption is trauma, and emotional trauma, especially. There is no way that you can avoid being corrupt unless you have healed your past. And this is both simple to understand and also very difficult to admit to, because you are all corrupt to the bone. And don't even try denying it. If you have the past, if you have memories that you're still carrying with you, you're corrupt, because it instructs corruption. And most of you have more than one emotional memory, right? You have multiple traumas, and each and every one of them will instruct you. You can't follow it. This is an emergency. So today, we all live in a state of emergency, which means emergency rules, right? And when we apply the kind of emergency rule set to what's happening in the world, because, oh, right. It means suspension of the normal rules. Because in an emergency, I'm allowed to do this thing. And because we have so much, it now applies to every rule, every situation, and we're all entitled. So, greater good, thing of the past. And it's fun to look at, but it can also be scary, I know. But we need, as like in spiritual work, we need to understand our human psychology for real. We need to understand human biology, because it's always underestimated when it comes to spiritual work. Now, part of what I'm doing is try to make you all understand how much you are being controlled by your biology. And I said the only way past it is you have to heal. You have to do growth work and let go of your past in a way that you learn. So, as I've said, healing is learning. It's not the fantasy that, oh, if only I get this thing, if only I get recognition, if only everyone tells me how sorry they are. It's not that. You need to learn. You need to be competent. Every emotional trauma was about you not understanding how to deal with a situation, you behaving incompetently. So the key is always to learn what could I have done differently. How could I bring this situation into balance? It's how we reach harmony. It's by competence. It's through skill. Harmony is not you thinking and talking about how much you want peace and harmony, because there's so much, terrible stuff in the world. It's you being able to move and dance with rhythm and harmony to the music of life. It takes skill. You need to understand. You need to learn. So spiritual healing work is, number one, taking responsibility for our own existence and understanding that each trauma is me not understanding how to be in sync with life. So I was basically walking into the furniture, bumping my head into the wall or corners, and it hurts. Yeah, it's that. And then we learn. We learn about ourselves, we learn about life, so that we can behave and create and live in harmony. And again, harmony is not life giving you what you want. It's you being able to go past that and work with nature the way it is. Understanding laws of nature, understanding spiritual laws, which is the same thing, and then understand how to live in harmony with life productively so you can achieve what you want. You can build, you can create, you can express through nature, not through the thought that nature life is in your way. For as long as we have the stories that life owes me something, you're blocking your healing. Because that emotional story of injustice, it will never, ever go away until you learn, until you take responsibility. It's the quickest way, but also the most difficult one. Because we don't want to take responsibility for something someone did to us. But we need to recognize that that is the story. That is how we interpreted the situation based on our own incompetence. Well, I was just a child. Sure, that's why you were incompetent and why you need to learn. It's always you spiritually, and how you meet nature. Doesn't matter what form you're in, what age, what planet, and what dimension. It's you facing life, facing nature, and the imbalances in you, the lack of competence in you being exposed, so you can do something about it. It's how you gradually learn to be in harmony. It doesn't just happen. The only way out of corruption is this, right? It's healing the past. It's taking responsibility. It's learning, building your skills, so that in all those areas where life showed you that, yeah, you don't know how to do this thing, you don't know how to do that thing, that you've actually learned and you're able to practice it and you're able to nail it, then you're healed, not before. And when you're healed, you will move into a state, oh, wow, I can not only survive, I can create abundance. If you figure out how to grow 1 carrot, you can grow 100. If you can grow 100, you can grow 1,000. It's that. Once you figure out in yourself how to be in harmony, then you don't have to break the rules, because you're working with the rules and laws of nature in a productive way. And then you are free, because it's not about man-made laws. It's about how to live and how to kind of produce and express in existence. And with that level of abundance, you have no problems adjusting to the human rules, because they don't bother you. They're not stopping you. So you can be patient, and you will give them all carrots, right? So that is how we can move out of it. Do we have any questions or comments?
We do have a couple questions in the audience.
Yeah, I have actually, this is a corrupt question.
Good.
Let's say that I listened to my own corruption, and I kind of had my sights on something, and these are my values, and then I thought, yeah, but I can also get away with this. And then the consequence of that hits pretty well. And I was thinking, how can I then more easily and more efficiently repair and heal the whole complex of what I created in a way? Is it just to write it out, or is it some way to kind of work with what happened? Because it's an experience, not necessarily what I needed, because I already know this, but then I repeated it. So I was thinking, asking for a friend.
Yes, but it's back to what we've been talking about. You need to identify the trauma. Trauma is basically an impact, right? That there has been created a negative in you, right? If you think of, there should be an equal energy, where you are the microcosm, and then you have the macrocosm, which is life. And when we're able to kind of like meet exactly, everything will be canceled, like sound cancellation. When we're not quite there, it will make an impact, because that will be more powerful and we will be weak, and it will be the negative, then showing kind of the dent, and that will be the exact imbalance. So we will have the structure showing the exact kind of power of impact and where it hits us. So that dent represents the exact imbalance. And then it's a matter of figuring out how do we work with this, right? But finding the trauma, and always just assume that, yeah, I've got dents, right? And this is where I need then to figure out how to rebuild myself. But in the meantime, understand that, yeah, we will act out of self-interest, because that's what we do when we're injured, because it's a state of emergency. But also then be relaxed about it and say, like, yeah, the more emergency we experience, the more we will apply the rules of emergency. And it's just how it is. So when you then try not to be corrupt, you can't do it. Because you're instructed genetically to just do whatever. Fill your pockets, right? Say whatever. Manipulate, like, because it's an emergency. So we need to be in a state of healing, and we need to, this is a big part of spiritual work and growth work, is to clean our own house, meaning healing. You know, we can't release the past if we still have injury. Because many people try to do this in spiritual work, and it's not possible. You cannot, through magic, all of a sudden make something balanced. Because balanced means that you're able to do it. It's not like you have let go of it. It's a skill. Right? It's like if you're supposed to, in a situation, use a power drill, right? And you don't know how to do it, so it fucked everything up. Saying, oh, I let go of this, doesn't mean that you know how to use a power drill. And in every possible situation and angle, life is trying to show you how you can move into a skill, which means that you're able to be in harmony with life and co-create and be present. This is how we build consciousness. It's a skill set, because it's not about just letting go. You can let go of anything and everything, but can you do anything? Do you actually bring anything of value? How can you be of service to life if all you can do is let go? Spiritual work is extremely concrete also when it comes to being in service. Sometimes things need to get done. You need skills. You need to have figured everything out in your own life process. So it's back to that. We have to do the work. Simple solutions don't work. This is the wonderful thing about illnesses, for instance. So many people try that. I will just let go. I will just allow the healing. Good luck with that, dumbass. You know, it's like, it doesn't work. It never works. And you can try that and convince yourself that, oh, I let everything go, it feels good. Sure, you can have the placebo effect for a while, but it will come back. because you haven't learned anything, right? Over time, when you're into spiritual work for real, things will hit you again and again and again. And you start understanding that, yeah, there are no quick solutions. I can't just let go. I can't just believe. I can't just do all of these things. Life requires of me to have the skills, to figure out exactly where to be and what to do in the right moment, and to see the bigger picture and place myself in it so I'm in alignment with what I do and how I impact the world. It takes work. So waking up, ascending, as we talked about, it takes education. It's that simple. It's not how much you want to give up or give over and just surrender. Fine, but can you twerk? Like, can you actually do something? Can you actually express in harmony with life? And it's not the letting go part that is interesting, because that simply means that you have less resistance. Less resistance doesn't mean that you've learned anything. So it's understanding that spiritual work takes an enormous amount of focus and intention and work and investment and effort and repetition. And everyone involved with spiritual work for real, they know that every fraction of an inch costs everything, right? It's blood, sweat, and tears and your whole family and all your money. It's just like it takes everything. But then you learn, this is actually what it takes. Because you've tried everything else first. You've tried all the easy solutions, and you're still traumatized. You're still corrupt. You're still selfish. You're still let the ego dominate. And you can't go past that unless you heal for real. Right? So true spiritual studies, true spiritual practices, it's the only way. But when it comes to corruption, understanding emotional trauma, right, and how it's connected, the state of emergency, and say, right, that's why. And you can see it. When you look at really corrupt people, you go, yeah, they're in pain. They are in a state of emergency, which means they're just like, they are insatiable. And this is how it is, right? When you're healed, you have no needs. You also know this when you're in deep meditation, for instance. It's a state of healing, right? Although it's temporary, but you have no needs. So there's no corruption at that very moment, at least. Right? But the moment you go back to your life, your traumas and injuries will be reactivated, but that's fine. But it's just, we need to be realistic, right? I'm always for including the whole human journey and understand what it is. Not to judge it, but to understand how to work with it. Because we cannot grow spiritually when we base it on fantasy, right? When we try to deny what it means to be human, and also what it means to be a spiritual being. Beliefs will never get you anywhere. It is down to the practices. It's back to learning, educating yourself, practicing, and getting results that are irreversible and permanent. And that you see in your level of healing. So you have to heal. Otherwise, you will just continue to be corrupt in every possible way. And it's not just the entrepreneurial part of it, which can be good, but it's the other part, right? Where we're willing to inflict harm to others and to the world if it benefits us in that moment, right? And we know the more intense the pain is, the more it takes control, right? Just think of yourself. If you have a slight pain, well, that can wait. If it's a little more painful, I need a painkiller. If it's an emergency, get out of my fucking way! You know, it's that. It changes very quickly, right? And yeah, most people get to the last stage very quickly. And then we're selfish and then we do all of these things. So also, as I always say, the best way to heal is to avoid injury. But that takes skill. Most of you will injure yourself in every single situation because you're not in harmony with life. Learning to not injure yourself or others. Right? Because again, if you feel it's worth it, you will harm other people. And many of you, even though you're involved with spiritual work, you're still harming other people. Right? You're still willing to cause harm to the world around you. And then you go home and feel, oh, I'm so spiritual because, you know, I helped this flower. It's that, right? And I recognize that this is the confusing thing about the human spiritual journey, is that we can compartmentalize everything. People can steal, and then they go home to meditate. We've actually experienced, for instance, at this center, that people have stolen crystals, which are, you know, here, we use them as spiritual tools. And then they take them home and they've stolen them and then try to use them as spiritual tools. Right? It's that. The human brain is like that. We all have that brain, which means also you are able to do the same thing in different ways. Because it was an emergency after all. You know, maybe that person really felt, I really need that crystal and, you know, it will really help me, so I should steal it. You know, we make up all sorts of stories to justify how we cause harm. So we all need to look at this in ourselves and understand that, yeah, we all need to heal. So please play around with this, but also, you know, see this process and see it in the world and see kind of the level of stress, injury, you know, pain, how it's being expressed, combined with all of these psychological patterns that I have talked about. And you can see why the world is how it is, and why there is no way back for now. But you have a choice, right? You can choose your own behavior. But that, you know, that very hypocritical way of dealing with our spiritual work by you doing something with your left hand and something else with your right. It's that, and it comes from you not having done enough healing work. So you must just accept that as long as you've got deep healing to be done, you will be corrupt. You will be behaving this way. You will be stealing and cheating and lying and attacking and all of that. Don't pretend it's not happening, because that makes it worse. Include it in the spiritual journey. Say, well, this is what it is. And it's fine. But own up to it. Don't just like point to corrupt leaders and, aha, they just do the same thing. It's just they have more resources and it's more visible. Right? But they also think that I'm just doing this thing for me because, you know. So the thing is that that one person will just like throw out the candy wrapper out the car window. A person on top will then decide, well, we're going to use harmful chemicals in our foods because it will increase shelf life. I know people will get cancer, but money, you know. It will be the same thing. It's the same mindset. It's just opportunity and benefit, and because humans are not able to understand the impact of a lot of people. we're still tribal. So people cannot understand that I do something like this and it will impact 1 million people. This is also why, when it comes to rules, why we think I can just do this. When we go back in history, right, you could just do whatever, absolutely whatever, and it will not impact the environment at all, or other people, you know. You could cut down as many trees as you wanted to, nothing. You could pollute, or it didn't mean anything because, you know, there were so few people and so few tribes. And this is the reality we're all operating on. And we can't understand the complexity of civilization. So we make our decisions based on how it will work in a tribe, you know, with 5 million people on this planet. So I will just do this thing, right? So when people are in positions where they influence 100 million people, they think it's the same thing. And it's also why it's so difficult for us to adjust to a civilization where if everyone did this, because, you know, it's just me. That's also the corruption. Think of how many times you've done, well, I just, you know. Sure. The ethical way is always to filter through this thought. If everyone on the planet did this, would it uplift or would it harm? In a lot of things we do, we think it's just me. So rules and regulations and laws are there to make sure that we behave in a way that is not harmful in a systemic way. And it's impossible for the human brain and genetics to relate to. So we all have resistance to that because we just want to do what we want to do. And back to the more rules and regulations we have, the more corrupt we become. Because we think that I should be able to do whatever I want to and not think about, well, if 1 billion people does this, it can end us all. But we don't take responsibility for that because our brain, well, we're talking about 50 people. That's all, right? So we're not genetically equipped for this world, this civilization. And so we have, again, many different levels of corruption in us. And they're not necessarily bad. It's just how the human brain operates, right? So include it, study it, and understand that we will behave the way we do based on our level of consciousness, based on our level of, you know, injury and harm and past and emotions and stories. And until we've healed, we will do that thing, you know. And when we are in pain or corrupt, we will be rooting for corrupt people because it's also how we can get away with it. We want what we do to become the rule because after all, we're smarter, right? So all of this is happening in our civilization now, and it's peculiar and entertaining to watch. But spiritually, it doesn't mean that you don't have responsibility. Part of waking up means that we stop comparing ourselves to whatever everybody else is doing because they behave from a very low consciousness. They're behaving based on their biology, and part of waking up means that we go beyond that. We include it, but we also go beyond it. Right? So it's a whole different process. Yes?
In this process of spiritual healing, you mentioned crystals as a tool, but we got a question on YouTube about, and I don't think I've actually heard you address this one necessarily, specifically physical tuning forks as tools of vibration and energy. How do those play a role in spiritual healing?
It depends on the frequency. You know, sound is sound, vibration is vibration. So not all sounds and vibration will have a healing effect. So it depends. It's just like, you know, nutrients. A certain nutrient may be beneficial for you or it may be harmful. It depends what you need at that moment. So it's not like simply because you have a physical tuning fork that will heal you. Because what you need to balance yourself changes continuously. But there are plenty of different tools and approaches. I think in our healing work, part of the fun is to explore and see, does this actually work? And often we know, well, it worked a little bit, but because it's always back to us. It's all back to us taking responsibility and figuring out how this can be applied in such a way that I increase my skill set. Often when people use tools, they want to do it instead of learning. This thing, I should just do that and it should heal me. That never happens. But as we become more aware, we can play around with a lot of different approaches, and whether it's tools or machines or supplements or crystals, whatever it is, it's for you to study, it's for you to play around with. Because ultimately, it's your expansion of consciousness that matters. Everything else are just manifestations of how you're out of tune. So I am all for humans trying absolutely everything, because it's the result that matters, and what may assist you in your healing today may cause harm tomorrow, and vice versa. So it's also moving into that way of thinking and being completely free in what we are drawn to and what we'd like to test out. Because over time, we will be able to differentiate when we're just kidding ourselves, right? When it's just placebo, both physically and spiritually, or when something is actually working. But it's for each and every one of us to find out. When we're attracted to something, we can say, well, maybe there's something there. It doesn't have to be the solution for everything, but it might be something, right, that will tune us in somehow. So if you're drawn to tuning forks, absolutely. Is it a solution to whatever it is? No. But it's the same with all other approaches, right? Is it something that affects you in that very moment, and how? Right? So using specific frequencies and sound frequencies and all of that can be beneficial. But again, experiment, explore. And as I often tell people, when people work with a certain approach, they often present it as the solution to everything. And we find out the further we go that it isn't. Most people go through so many different approaches and healing techniques and tools and whatever it is. And we kind of grow into them and we grow out of them, which is natural. Right? So have fun on the way. Experiment, but over time we get less enthused by the hype. And we get more interested in does this actually work for me? And how do I figure that out? How do I listen? How do I register for real if this helps me in my healing or my process at all? So that is also what we over time learn, which then can make using different tools or whatever it is even more fun.
Okay, we don't have any more on YouTube. Do we have any more questions in the audience? I think we are ready for our wrap-up.
Okay, now, yes. As I said, corruption is good. We need it. It's part of our creativity. Because understand that humans always want to control each other in different ways. It's just like, as I've said before, when you're out in traffic, you want everybody else's behavior and how they drive to be 100% predictable so that you can take a shortcut and you can just do that thing because you want to. And you're so annoyed if someone else is, because they're just supposed to do what they're, So we all want to control everybody else so that we can be free. We all are like that. But we need also to have that wiggle room. So it's one thing to try to make society work somehow and also respect human nature. Corruption is a very negative word. And as Andy also said, we need different words, right? Because it's also being entrepreneurial. It's being open. It's being, creative and trying to figure out how things work. And this is also what kids do. Kids are supposed to break rules and, when parents are not at home, right? Most kids, they will, go and explore and try things. And it's that. We all need to be creative and open and be respectful to human nature. Human nature cannot be put in a box. It cannot be controlled. The rules of evolution dictates that we have to be more creative than that. Repetition that causes stagnation means death. And often when we regulate and we have too many rules, everything dies. Right? So it's interesting that we both want that control, but it makes everyone more corrupt. And today, we're faced with that human behavior systemically is very unhealthy and very harmful. And at the same time, we need new solutions. Right? We can't continue the way we have in our civilization. So it means people will become more corrupt than ever. The systemic stress, the traumatization, all of that, we're all kind of drawn into that direction. So the responsibility we all have to heal and to take responsibility for our own growth and healing for real, to not blame the world, to eradicate the thought completely that the world owes you anything, because that is the root of it. To truly inspire yourself spiritually and to learn what that means, to develop and establish healthy spiritual practices so that you may resolve your past, so that you have less pain, so that your body will not be in a state of emergency and your emotions and mind are telling you these stories. When we're in the state of emergency, this is also why it's difficult for people to sit down and meditate. Right? When you sit down and meditate if your house is on fire, it's that. Your body thinks it is. So it's difficult for that reason. Meaning we have to heal for real. And we heal by going into true spiritual practices, by learning spiritual principles, by applying them, by becoming better versions of ourselves, is what we're able to demonstrate in the moment that heals the past. When you demonstrate the skills necessary, your past will no longer be relevant. So focusing on the here and now, developing your skills, becoming an adult, and gradually maturing, it will help you release the past. And you will move into abundance, which is the opposite of thinking the world owes you something. It's the state where you know you have something to give, and that you have something to give in every situation, and that it comes from abundance. So it's not like you giving something away, it's giving through you. When you are a balanced individual, and when you are aligned, the more you give, the more you will be filled, because it's not coming from you. Nature is giving through you. Nature is balancing life through you. And then you are in a state of healing. It's not even difficult. But it takes daily spiritual practices. It takes a lot of love, and it takes that complete, realistic inclusion of what the human journey is. So love the corruption. Love the limitations. Love everything that humans are doing to each other. And understand that at some point, they will learn. They will figure it out. But in the meantime, take responsibility for your own journey. Take responsibility for your own healing and set the example so that you may inspire people out of their own corruption and suffering and into the light.
Thank you so much, IKYA, and thank you all for joining us tonight for IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. So tonight is our second to last episode before summer holidays, so be sure to join us next Monday, 24th of June at 19 o'clock Oslo time, both here on YouTube Live and at IKYA Center here in Oslo, Norway. Again, it's our last episode before summer holidays, and we won't be back for 6 weeks until mid-August. So be sure to join us. We'll have a kind of finale episode before summer, and we look forward to seeing you then. And until then, be well.